discovered two different ways to create PC tokens through the PDFs and through the detail adder files, which of course is the recommended method. You will be happy to know that creating monsters for Vanny to fight is even easier because they only have 3 or 4 powers each on average, and the monster blocks are pretty short. For this exercise, what we have chosen is a skeleton warrior, and I have actually dragged out from my library a generic skeleton token right there, a blank one, and wasted no time in adding a handout. And I get all these images from Google. I just go D&D space skeleton, and in the search results there's a link for images. Click on that and a whole bunch of pictures come up, and I just download one of those and navigate using this plus sign here, this green circle here, and put it in there, and you're good to go. Once again, that's not essential, but I like to do it. It just gives the game more flavor and more color. And what we need to do next is go to the notes tab and put in a monster block, which is, you can see I've done that too. I get it from the compendium there, which you probably have access to. If you don't, there will be instructions on my website on how to get to that. And that looks good there. You can edit anything you want here. I don't recommend that because the importer is expecting it to be in a particular format. So usually that's fine the way it is. And this is a little different than PC tokens because you'll remember that we had to do F4 first and then paste in all that XML into the little field that comes up. Here we need to actually put it on the notes tab first because I need all these carriage returns that you see here, these line breaks. That's what helps me parse all the data. So we can say okay there. And once again, click on the MPB if this is their first time of the day that you're loading the sample campaign to wake it up. So we can do the F4. So we'll go back onto the skeleton and we will go function F4. And it's going to chomp on that data. And we get some output in the chat. And as you can see, there's only 2 powers for this one. And BA Longsword and Speed of the Dead. BA stands for basic attack. So don't change that. That's actually going to be removed for you. That's a little code that we have to know that we're doing a basic attack, and it will come out on the label for the macro as M, little M Longsword, as we will see now. As you can see, it has generated the library token for the Skeleton Warrior like it did before for Vanny. It's a different ring color this time, halo color. And we will click on Skeleton Warrior, actually double click, and make sure that it has parsed out all the properties properly. And we see that it's got init bonus and hit points, all that good stuff. And it's named it properly. The description, the XP is important, so make sure it's the right XP amount because that will be used when he's defeated to hand out to your players automatically. And the defenses, of course. And we have speed there. That looks good. And all his ability scores, and of course all the skills have been done too. And that looks good. Go to the config. Notice it has recognized that he has dark vision. This won't be turned on earlier, as we discussed earlier, until combat actually starts, so it doesn't reveal any fog of war for you unnecessarily. So yep, and you should be the owner. And we looked at the properties, and you'll notice the notes tab now has the powers encoded just like Vanny had on his tab, but of course this is much shorter. And make sure this is in the proper ordering and format. And that looks good the way it is. If there's anything wrong here, for example, one of the things that we need to look out for is to make sure the brackets match. For every left bracket, like right there, there needs to be a right bracket. If that doesn't happen, and Wizards of the Coast isn't perfect in doing the compendium, it does happen sometimes where they forget to put a right bracket. You have to put it in, otherwise it's going to just say forget it, I'm not doing this, because it needs those in order to properly format the powers and stuff like that, so and parse them out correctly. So let's actually see what happens. We're going to say okay here, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with Vanny. Very easy. It's very consistent, the process. It doesn't matter which of these buttons you click on. Let's go macro management. And here again, we see select powers and traits, and all by default. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do all of them, but it's no big deal, especially if there's only 2 powers. And we'll say okay there, and that will start the import process. Your first form comes up. Now, flavor text, I like to put something interesting in here, and I have pre-made some descriptions that we can copy and paste into that field. And rather than you actually watching me type this out, which I don't want to do, and I don't think you want to watch me doing, I'm just going to put it in there. And make sure that the keywords are correct. This is actually tough to do. It's, again, the formatting gets a little weird for some of the monsters, and the proper keywords don't go in there. They go at the beginning of effect text. This is especially true for traits, like we're going to see for Speed of the Dead later, but I think that goes in okay. And again, do not change the name. I failed to mention that in the Vanny videos. Keep the name the same. I've been thinking about growing that out, but you don't always want to do that because sometimes you want to extend a power by doing a variant of a power, and then it's okay to change the name. But the rest of the stuff looks good. The range, and yes, it's an attack, and it's at will. It's a standard action. And we do want to run attack triggers always, and well, maybe not always, but I like triggers. They're very cool. And there it goes. It's detected. It's a basic attack thanks to that BA coding at the beginning there. And let's see, range text. It is a melee attack against AC against one creature, and you can select the rest of these as need be. And the attack bonus looks good, and the damage, and yeah, the hit text. By the way, I know it's a little inconvenient, this format, to have this just with this one continuous line. It'd be nicer to have like a block here, but that's HTML, and I don't want to go down that route. Other framework writers way back when they tried that, it didn't work out well for them. HTML is a bad idea in map tool macros because it slows things down and it's buggy and all kinds of things. So I've seen what other framework guys have done. It looked nice, but I don't know, it screwed up sometimes. So yeah, that all looks good. So we'll say okay. And we have an effect that has been detected. This guy can mark, and this time range 1 is correct because he's not going to be marking himself. He's going to be marking somebody else within range of his longsword, which is only 1 square. And you don't need to worry about the property, but because that's just going to be a mod of 0. It's going to change the AC by 0, so that's becomes irrelevant there. But the duration is till the end of the monster's next turn, the skeleton's next turn. That's why we have link equals self there. But the actual mark itself will go on Vanny or whoever he's fighting. So we'll say okay to that. That looks good. By the way, notice it didn't ask for configure targeting there. It already knows that happens on a hit. And the power will know, the macro will know which guy the skeleton hit. So it will apply that basic mark to him. It doesn't need to ask you, well, hey, who gets this effect? So that's important too. Again, flavor text, we want to go and grab the next description here. We'll copy and we'll plunk that in there. The thing that was in there before is just my little joke. It's a generic description. It's fine. Again, just like the handout, you want to put something interesting in there because when the players do their monster checks at the beginning of the combat, this is what they're going to get if they roll high enough on their knowledge checks, their monster knowledge checks, to get a description. They're going to get that description. And this looks good. Again, as I was saying before, this one doesn't have any keywords, but watch that. And the effect text looks like it came out good. And it is a utility, at least in my judgment. It is at will, and it's a no action. And you know what? We know that he's able to do this on an opportunity attack. So tell you what, how about we define a trigger for this? So it's going to ask us, well, when do you want Speed of the Dead run? And we will answer opportunity attack when it asks us that. and it's just a personal buff for himself. So it's yeah, it's a you are the one getting it. You meaning the DM, of course. And all this is blank. Make sure attacks is set to 0. If this is set to 1, then it's going to think it's an attack, which is not the case in this particular scenario. So yeah, that looks good, and we'll say okay there. It's going to detect another effect. Speed of the Dead implements an extra 1d6. Here's what that's asking. It's asking, listen, I know this does an extra 1d6 of damage, but I don't know whether you want that as a bonus, so when we do hit, it gets added, or damage as right now. So I think we should do it as a bonus, because that way, if it comes into effect when it gets hit, when the other guy gets hit, great, it'll add it. If he doesn't get hit, it'll just ignore it. So that's the way you want to do it. It's not necessarily damage right away, because what if the guy misses? Then you shouldn't be doing damage to the guy that you're attacking, the PC token. So we'll say it as a bonus. Okay. And it also gives him an attack bonus with a mod of 2. Now, this is for the skeleton, so we're going to change this to 0 because it's for him and nobody else. But the importer doesn't know. It's trying to read and understand the source text, but it's just a machine. It doesn't know. It's only so smart. At least that's the way I programmed it anyway. It's difficult to know whether it's for somebody else or for him. So I err on the side of caution and actually put the 1 in there. So that's going to be to his Gen At mod, and it's going to be a duration of attack. So when the attack's over, he loses this attack bonus of 2, which is the behavior we want. So we'll say okay. Now what it's asking for here is that damage bonus for the 1d6. Look at this. It has misunderstood. It thinks that attack bonus of 2, it says, oh, the mod is 2, but it's not. It's the 1d6. So this is why it's very, very difficult for the importer to properly understand which numbers are applying to which effects. So in this case, we have to correct it. We have to say, nope, it's 1d6. It's not 2. It's confusing itself here. So once again, range of 0. It's going on him. And once again, duration attack, because it's over once the attack is over. We'll say okay to that. And now it's asking for configure targeting, the attack bonus for allies. And it's range of 0 because it's on himself. It's going to ask that for the damage bonus 2 against range 0, include self, correct? And here it's asking Speed of the Dead use strike feature, runner. Now, remember we were talking about the mark. Now, this is what it's actually talking about. And let's say we want to get prompted for that. So we'll say okay. And display handout. You know what? Let's do it at initiative. So when this guy rolls initiative, the players are going to get a pop-up on their screen with that handout that we saw at the beginning. So we'll say okay. You can choose something else. That's just my personal preference. Say okay. And there we go. Looks like it finished. So once again, there's the round bell that lets you know. So like you're off getting some chips or something like that, and you need to be notified that it's finished. That nice loud bell will certainly do it. And yep, it's got our at will and our free no, which is where you will find the Speed of the Dead. It's actually off the screen there at that point. I'll just raise this a bit, and we can actually see the tooltips come up. Activate RV is to activate his resistance and vulnerabilities. Let's take a quick look at that. We'll take a look at the library token. Yes, there's that M longsword. The small M means melee basic. A small R in front of a power means ranged basic. And there's the Speed of the Dead. Let's take a quick look at activate RV. And we see he has 4 register effect lines in here. He's vulnerable to radiant. And he has state immunity against ongoing poison, because what's the point in putting ongoing poison on an undead? It's not going to affect them. So this tells the framework, listen, don't bother. If some PC wants to try that, it's not going to work. It doesn't make sense. So, and he also resists necrotic to the tune of 10, and once again, he's completely resistant to poison, hence the mod of 500 right there. So that looks good. So we'll cancel that. That'll get run automatically when he rolls initiative. So we're good there. So that all looks good. And now we can do some interesting things. Say we have already tested this fully and we're ready to duplicate that to get some more, because there's not going to be just one skeleton warrior. We want a whole bunch. And let's say we want to do 4. The way we do that is we go to this Frankenstein's lab and we go create duplicates. Say okay. And I don't know, I'll just choose some colors at random. These colors will appear on the perimeter of the token. It's called a halo. So we are going to get Skeleton Warrior Cyan, Lime, Olive, and Silver. So we'll say okay there. And you can name them different things if you want to. I recommend doing that because how do they know? How do the players know that it's a Skeleton Warrior? So we'll just say okay through all these. And we get some output for create duplicates that it created all those different colors of monsters, and we can peel them off. As you can see here, we get 4 guys. Now, here's where things can get a little interesting if you want to mix it up a little and add some variety to your skeletons. What I like to do is to add a template. You know, in the appendix of the DM's guide, you can actually add some interesting abilities to different monsters and make them into elites or even solos. And what we can do now is we can go to, let's see, Frankenstein's lab, apply functional template, say okay, and we get an error. What does it say? No valid templates found for medium natural animate undead. Why does it say this? Because if you know the rules for template application, you know that this isn't valid. You can't do it to animates, but you can do it to humanoids. So the way we fix that is we go to properties and we can, well, actually this is not strictly according to the rules, but this is just for illustration purposes. I'm not suggesting you actually do this in actual practice. You're going to have an actual humanoid here. So we will say natural animate there. We'll change that to humanoid. Let's try it now. So we will go to, and by the way, you'd have to have at least 2 monsters because it's going to erase one of the base monsters. So what we want to do now is go to apply functional template and see if it works this time. That, yes, we've got some choices now. What do we choose here? How about a bodyguard? We'll say okay. And we get some more choices for more powers. So Indomitable Presence and Shield Bearer. So we'll say okay to that. And yeah, again, I don't actually, this time I don't have flavor text for these, but you get the idea. You can actually type that in as you see fit. And we get some effect text there. And yeah, that all looks good. Say okay. And it's found another effect. Now we'll say okay for 2. A is a property, which is not valid. And it bestows an attack penalty of 2. This time range is correct because you don't want to, he doesn't want to put an attack penalty on himself, which would be range 0. So we'll do range 1, and that lasts for the whoever is affected, his attack. It'll end after he attacks. And here we have another basic mark here going on. So range 1, AC and self, just like we did before. And it's actually allowing some shifting to going on. And yes, that's for himself. I imagine if it's not, then correct that as the case may be. And attack penalties is going to enemies. Notice that right there, and a range of 1. And because it's not him, it's somebody else that he's affecting. He's affecting 1 creature. That's why include self is not checked. So we'll say okay there. Shield Bearer, this is another ability of the monster, of the new body card template that we are putting on this guy. And we'll say okay to that, sure. Again, check all the fields if it's configured the way you want it to. And I imagine this is putting a defense bonus of 2 on a ally. So it's not going to be him. It's going to be a range of 1. So a 2 bonus to his AC at the end of his turn. This monster's turn, not the beneficiary's turn. So defense bonus for allies. Yeah, actually, it's a range of 1, wasn't it? That's what we were talking about, because it's you know, 1 creature that he can see allies, and he's not going to include self because that's not for him, if I remember the bodyguard template properly. Once again, it's asking for handout. So once again, let's put initiative there and say okay. We get the bell ring. Now it's asking, it's saying, well, okay, you've created an elite now, but you have to balance things out by deleting a standard. So why don't we delete the base monster, the uncolored one? So you can see in the chat that we've got all the results of the template application. And let's see, we have got a new library token. Look at that. Lib : Skeleton Warrior Bodyguard. That's new. And this original Skeleton Warrior is a backup. So what you want to do is reactivate that as the regular Skeleton Warrior. If you still have the regular skeletons hanging around, then take out the backup, say okay, and now these guys down here, which are the regular Skeleton Warriors, as we can see from this last group here. Remember how we talked about this in the architecture video? Lib : Skeleton Warrior is what these 2 macros will be looking for, because that's the name of the group. And they're going to find it now, because there he is. The backup word that we had in the name, that's just for safety reasons, so it doesn't get overwritten, all that good stuff. So there we go. And believe it or not, we can still have some more fun with our skeletons. Let's say this bottom guy, Skeleton Warrior Silver, we want to make him more interesting. How can we do that? Well, we can do something else with these guys. And to be honest, your players probably won't like you very much for doing this. But too bad. It's your game. You can run it anywhere you want. We can go to Frankenstein's lab and do something nasty, like change the level. Say okay. And how about we're in a really mean mood, and we'll raise his level by 2. Say okay. That sound effect is for getting hit points. And we'll give them more XP for this guy now. So we'll change him to 200. Say okay. And notice the screen's gone black again. We can close that overlay right there. And we get some more output in the chat showing how the level has been increased. And we can use him. Notice how in the bottom left there in his pop-up sheet, he is now a soldier 5 in the top right there. He was 3 before, but we've increased his level, and you can see all his stats have changed accordingly, according to that. And the one last thing I wanted to mention that's interesting is you can actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go applications and go to, let's see, monster manual. Then we will look up skeleton. Where's that guy? Oh boy, it's jumping around on me. Skeleton is on 234. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add some lore to that token. So we go to where the skeleton lore is, and what we're going to do is we're going to copy this, and we're going to put it on, let's say, cyan right there. Normally you do this before you're duplicating, so it propagates it all to the duplicates as well. But again, we're just having some fun here and doing this for illustration purposes. Add lore under Frankenstein's Lab. So we'll say OK there, and we will paste in that block. And it's going to add some religion tracks for us. Usually it's okay to just OK through these. There's the DC 15 track. Okay. And we don't need a failure track for that DC one. So it actually adds that text in there. So when they do their monster check, they're going to get some extra information here. Again, this is not mandatory. You don't have to do this. But I like to do it on my monsters because it just gives them more life and puts more meaning into the game rather than just a clash of different stats and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. That's about all that you can do. Well, I mean, you can do more things with monsters, but those are the main functions. And yeah, I hope that really helps you bring your monsters alive for your players. Thanks very much for watching.